right, good morning, 7th graders. This is the recording for Friday, March 20th, so the 3rd this week. For me, it's actually Tuesday night, 6 o'clock. I'm pre-recording these. So for this lesson, you will need the interactive notebook, you will need your notebook, and you will need the textbook. I got all the books. All right, the textbook, as always. We are going to get started with looking at the remaining territories that the U.S. got as part of the westward expansion. And then you guys will do the process activity that, I put it away too early. Here. That will be on page 146. You will do this process activity at the end, or you also have the option to write a short, I don't want to call it an essay because it's 15 to 20 sentences, but a short response regarding this topic. Okay, let's go to screencast. I'll see you guys later. How we acquired the Louisiana Territory, Florida, Texas, and now we're moving on to Oregon country, and we're also talking about the Mexican-American War today. Okay, so let's go to our interactive notebook. You should already have, I'm assuming, let's see, can I count? You should have 1, 2, 3 pictures already done. So we're adding Oregon country as our next title, or just Oregon. And then as always, we are creating the same picture. So go ahead and draw in, first of all, draw the square, United States, Florida, Louisiana Territory, Texas, Oregon country, Mexican cession, and then add the Rocky Mountains, add Washington, D.C., add Oregon country. Okay, and then we'll start with the narration. Okay, when the narrator says audience, the audience members will say all of Oregon or none. Well, again, we are by ourselves in front of a computer screen. So if you feel like screaming all of Oregon or none, go ahead. Otherwise, we'll just pretend you did it. Okay. In the early 1800s, many nations claimed Oregon country. By 1825, however, only 2 nations held firm in their claim. The United States and Great Britain agreed to a peaceful joint occupation of Oregon. Circumstances would soon change, however, and some Americans would call for more. All of Oregon or none. Did you scream it? It was very difficult to reach Oregon in the early 1800s. In 1824, a trapper named Jedediah Smith was excited to find a low, flat passage through the Rocky Mountains. Now the way was wide open for settlers. They heard that Oregon was a pioneer's paradise, and many of them packed up their belongings and moved from the east to Oregon. When settlers arrived in Oregon, they were thrilled by the fertile soil, amazed by the tall trees, and excited by the sunny weather. In 1844, a man named James K. Polk ran for president. He wanted the nation to expand across North America. One of his campaign slogans was repeatedly heard throughout the nation. All of Oregon or none. James K. Polk stood in front of voters and promised that the United States would one day own all of Oregon country, even if it had to fight Great Britain for it. Later that year, Polk was elected president. Americans who favored expansion celebrated. All of Oregon or none. Once in office, Polk changed his mind. He decided it wasn't worth a war to gain all of Oregon country. Instead, he made a deal to divide Oregon country between the United States and Great Britain. The settlers in Oregon cheered for the diplomacy that secured their land. Okay, so that was the narration part of this activity. You are now going to go ahead and read section 5 in your textbook. It is called, let me open the page with you guys. It is on page 286. That's in my new book. It might be different for you. It's called Oregon Country. It's 2 pages long. So you're reading 186 to 287. So take those 5 minutes, take 10 minutes, or however long it takes you to read this passage. Make sure you're reading it. Otherwise, you won't be actually learning anything. Okay, so go ahead and pause. All right, I'm assuming you just paused this video. You read the pages in your textbook. Now, let's go ahead and open up your interactive notebook. Your interactive notebook, we are on page 144, and you're answering these 3 questions. What agreement did Great Britain and the United States make in the 1820s concerning Oregon? Why Oregon was called a pioneer's paradise? And what did James Polk mean when he declared 54-40 or fight in the 1844 presidential campaign? Did he follow through with his campaign promise? Explain. As always, I need complete sentences. That's a subject, verb, and object. You are going to take a picture of your work and turn it in on Google Classroom. Good. I'm assuming you did this faithfully. Now let's check our answers. If you're not quite there yet, pause, do the work, and let's check our answers. Okay, what agreement did Great Britain and the United States make in the 1820s concerning Oregon? Great Britain and the United States agreed to a peaceful joint occupation of Oregon. So they were sharing Oregon. Why Oregon was called a pioneer's paradise? Well, they had fertile soil, great forests, sunny weather, no diseases, and free farms. Wait a minute, those are not complete sentences. I'm sure you guys did better than that. Okay, then what did James Polk mean when he declared 54-40 or fight? Polk wanted the United States to have the entire Oregon country and was willing to fight for promise, but instead used diplomacy to reach a compromise that gave half of Oregon to the United States and half to Britain. Okay, good. So, as always, we are not discussing in class because we're not together. However, I'd like you guys to copy this question into your notebook. Okay, was U.S. expansion into Oregon country justifiable? So copy this question into your notebook. So that will go just below your little picture that you drew for the Oregon country. And then please answer this question with 5 sentences. Give me reasons from the textbook. Back up your reasoning with evidence. Pause this video to do this really quickly. Again, this is in your notebook. Okay, I'm assuming you. All right, so we are, again, in our notebook. You're giving it the title, The Mexican-American War. So we're almost there. So in your notebook, you should have the Louisiana Territory, Florida, Texas, Oregon country, and lastly, our title is The Mexican-American War. You are going to go ahead and draw this for one more time, and then we're going to be done with this graphic. Go ahead and draw this, right? The United States, Florida, and so forth. And then go ahead and add the following. So Washington, D.C., you probably know this one by heart now. The Rio Grande in Texas. I've actually been on this one on a boat. The Nueces River and New Mexico. They have great skiing. California. Mexico in general. Did you notice it's right here? All right, we don't need volunteers. Just go ahead, maybe pause the video. Draw this in your notebook. The title again is The Mexican-American War. Okay, so I'm assuming you've done this. All right. All right, when the narrator says audience, the audience members will say, "It is our manifest destiny," loudly and in unison. Well, to say this in unison is easy because it's scream. Good. Let's practice together, audience. It's our manifest destiny. Okay, now let's begin. In 1845, Mexico owned the California and New Mexico territories. President Polk offered to buy these territories, but Mexico refused. Polk was disappointed and began pacing the floor. No. Relations between Mexico and the United States were strained. That means they're not really good. The United States had recently annexed Texas and claimed the Rio Grande as the border. Mexican officials pointed to the Rio Grande and said, "The Rio Grande is in our land." The Rio Grande is in our land. These Mexican officials also pointed to the Nueces River and said, "You belong there, north of the Nueces River." This conflict would only become worse. One day in 1846, U.S. soldiers were patrolling along the Rio Grande. Believing that the U.S. soldiers were on Mexican land, a group of Mexican soldiers attacked. When it was all over, 16 U.S. soldiers were wounded or lay dead on the ground. When President Polk heard the news, he was outraged. "Mexico has invaded our land," he declared. Congress declared war on Mexico, and some Americans celebrated. "It is our manifest destiny." Okay, at this point, it's probably good to know what that means. What's that vocab word again? Manifest destiny? Maybe go back and check it out. The Mexican-American War raged for the next 2 years. First, the U.S. Army invaded New Mexico and easily took the territory without firing a shot. The U.S. Army then invaded California and captured the territory with very few problems. Next, the U.S. Army invaded Mexico, where they faced fierce fighting. Bummer, we can't play this out in class. Eventually, the Mexican army surrendered. By early 1848, the United States had won the war and gained control of half of Mexico's land. Many Americans cheered and celebrated. "Whee! It's our manifest destiny!" Okay, so this was the narration portion of the activity, and it was our last time. So we are reading this in our textbook that is titled The Mexican-American War. It's in my book, it's section 6 on page 288, and it goes all the way to 290. Go ahead, take 5, 10, or 15 minutes to read this. Go at your own time, just pause this video. Good, I'm assuming you paused the video, you read this. Now we're in our interactive notebook. And you probably have noticed that our sections are not the same, right? I think for us it's section 5, here it's section 6. Okay, so we're on page 140. Let's see, 144. Yep, for us it's section 5. On page 144, first question is, why did President Polk think the Mexican government might want to sell California and New Mexico? Then go ahead, label the map with sentences to explain why the U.S. Congress declared war on Mexico in 1846. Then for number 3, go ahead and pause the video here if you're not done. Then for question number 3, choose 2 of these Mexican-American war battles locations: New Mexico, California, Monterrey, Buena Vista, or Chapultepec. Probably butchered that name. Then create 2 historical newspaper headlines for each of your 2 battle locations. Write the first headline for a U.S. newspaper whose editors agreed with Manifest Destiny. Write the second headline for a newspaper in Mexico. Okay, so this would be a newspaper that agrees with Manifest Destiny. And then this would be for the newspaper that is located in Mexico. Good. For number 4, list 3 details of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Then give 2 reasons some U.S. senators opposed this treaty. And then 5, why did the United States buy the Gadsden Purchase in 1853? Okay, again, go ahead and pause this video, do this work. Use the textbook to help you answer these questions. Okay, I'm assuming you paused the video, you did the work. Now let's check our answers. For number one, Polk thought the Mexican government might sell California and New Mexico because they were thinly settled and neglected by the Mexican government. This is for number two. Go ahead and label this. Oh, that's too far. Maybe pause it. Take a look at your labels. Did you have something similar? If not, add to it. Okay. Then for number three, choose two of these Mexican-American War battle locations, New Mexico, California, and so forth. Obviously, your answers may vary. I will definitely look over this when you take a picture of it and turn it in on Google Classroom. For number four, Mexico gave up Texas and the Mexican cession, which included the present-day states of California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico, and parts of Colorado and Wyoming. The United States agreed to pay Mexico $15 million. The United States promised to protect Mexican citizens living in Texas and the Mexican cession. Opposition. Some senators opposed the treaty because they felt the United States only had a right to Texas, not the Mexican cession. Others opposed the treaty because they also wanted it to cede parts of northern Mexico. And then five, why did the United States buy the Gadsden Purchase in 1853? Railroad builders wanted this flat piece of land to build a new route across the nation. Okay, so if you checked your answers, go ahead, take pictures, and turn it in on Google Classroom as well as your notebook. Then lastly, you have an option to do two things. Either you're gonna do, hang on, yeah, that's right. Okay, so first off, in your notebook, we're gonna copy this question: was U.S. expansion after the Mexican-American War justifiable? Again, we're writing 5 sentences. Give me reasoning that's backed up with evidence from the textbook. So in your notebook, copy the question: was U.S. expansion after the Mexican-American War justifiable? And answer the question in 5 sentences. Support your answer with evidence from the textbook. Okay, and this is where we have 2 options. So either you are gonna go to the processing page, which is on page 146 in your interactive notebook. There you will look at this drawing and add speech or thought bubbles for 4 elements. So that could be this person, this could be like animals, it could be anything here. Okay, so people, animals, or objects. In each bubble, write a short paragraph to express how that person, animal, or object might respond to the essential question: how justifiable was U.S. expansion in the 1800s? Include as many of the key content terms as possible in your paragraph. Okay, so you're gonna write 4 speech bubbles, thought bubbles, and you're answering the essential question for each one of them. That's your first option. If you want to be challenged a little bit more, go ahead, attach a Google document to the Google Classroom, write your name on it, and answer the following question: how justifiable was U.S. expansion in the 1800s? So this is the question. So the answer to that question is your claim. Your claim will be your first sentence. So you would say something like, the U.S. expansion in the 1800s was mostly justified because, totally justified because, mostly unjustified. You pick it and then you give me 3 reasons. So that's your claim. So you're going to be writing about 15, maybe 20 sentences, and you're going to use 3 to 5 pieces of evidence from the textbook to support your claim. The way we're going to cite is by using parentheses. So just, in parentheses, give me a page number from the textbook. I will know it's from the textbook. Okay, so those are your 2 options. Either you're turning into me page 146 of your interactive notebook with Lady Liberty, no, not Lady Liberty, with the westward expansion picture, American progress, or you are writing a short argumentative, I'm not going to call it an essay because it's 15 to 20 sentences, um, starting with a claim, answering that question using evidence, 3 to 5 pieces of evidence from the textbook. Okay, so those are your two options. Again, if you're writing this essay, you do not have to do the processing page on 146. Okay, you're doing either or. Please shoot me an email if you have any questions. I'm also curious for feedback. How was the workload? How did Google Classroom work for you? Please shoot me emails about how this week went for you. And if you have some ideas to improve anything, let me know. All right, guys, enjoy your weekend. Take care.